Hello everyone, my name is Nate Crain, and I'm a sergeant with the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Office, along with my partner, K9 Colt. And I'm excited to welcome you to our new video podcast, The County Line. In this series, we'll take you inside the divisions, stories, and people of the Sheriff's Office, giving our community a closer look at the daily operations of law enforcement here in Stanislaus County. We're excited to welcome Sheriff Jeff Dirkse as our very first guest on The County Line, especially as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of our nation. Sheriff, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Of course, Nate. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Well,
I don't know that you have a choice, though.
Well, yes, I typically do what you ask of me, and that's why we're here. And for our guests, this is a new podcast. We had an old audio-only version, and we wanted to kind of step into, right, be a little more innovative, step into a newer style, newer theme. And so now this is going to be audio and video. And so we did redo our set design. I am quite thrilled with how it came out.
I agree.
All
You
of
guys
us
did an excellent
collectively came together. We did all of the work ourselves, and we're really excited. And so thank you for being here.
No, I think this is fantastic. And, so I am not really a podcast guy personally. I don't know that I should say that, but I am, or I am not, as the case may be. But where I really like the idea of the podcast is, over time it allows us to go in depth and have like real conversations on so many of the topics that are of importance to the community, or regarding the profession, whatever the case may be. Because a lot of them, we do a lot of social media posts, informational, whatnot, but a lot of this stuff you can't cover in 60 seconds or 3 minutes, right? It is truly a ongoing conversations about whatever. Yeah. And so I think the format is great.
Well, we're certainly going to dive deeper into that as the months go by. Our goal is to release one podcast every month from just a variety of topics. I know that next month we've already got an idea set. The interview is set, and it's going to be a little bit different than what we've historically released in a podcast setting. But admittedly, and I haven't even talked to you about this, but my hope is, with your permission, of course, that we can talk about some of the topics that might be a little more controversial is probably the wrong word, but a little bit more
edgy.
Yeah, something that maybe some people that voted for you are like, yeah, Sheriff, that's great. We want to continue to go in that direction. But there are others that didn't vote for you
100%.
that are like, I don't like that.
Yes.
But let's talk about it, because when we communicate our thoughts and ideas, we can at least have a better understanding from where people are coming from. And so
Yes.
I want to really get into some, again, for the lack of a better term, controversial topics, but just to expose our community.
Maybe the better term is debatable topics.
Sure.
Right. You could go direction A or direction B. There's pros and cons, or at least people pro and con both ways, or, advantages or disadvantages to either way. Yeah. I think that, and that's what I mean by those type of topics or conversations that are just, they're not 2-minute sound bites or, little videos or something. They are in depth, and some of it you may come out of 30 minutes or 60 minutes and still think, we could do that for the rest of the year.
Sure. And I'd be willing to guess that some of those topics we might do part 1 and part 2, maybe even a part 3. Who knows?
Some of these topics we have been talking about for years or decades. I mean, since the inception of America.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great segue. I appreciate you saying that.
I
That
thought
was
I
not
would
even
throw
scripted.
that out there for you.
That was all right. So everybody, for all of you that are tuning in, our goal, our hope was to bring the sheriff on. This podcast is going to be released on July 4th or a few days thereafter. And we were excited to celebrate the 250th birthday of our great nation, our independence from the British, and the sheriff spent many years, and we're going to dive deep into this, with our military. So he served our country, and now served our community as sheriff. And so maybe we can just get started with can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your service to the country, your time spent in the military, and how that kind of shaped you as our current sheriff?
Yeah, so let's see. This is 2026, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So actually, Friday, July 2nd, I will have spent 32 years in uniform, of one uniform or another.
Okay.
So I grew up here in Stanislaus County, down out in Denair, went to Turlock High, graduated in 1990, but then July 2nd of 1990, I went to West Point, the United
Okay.
States Military Academy at West Point. And so that's included in those 32 years. Doesn't count for retirement, of course, but
Sure.
it's 4 years, a 4-year Army college. And for people that are not overly familiar, if you watch football, it's the Army part of the Army-Navy football game. And a very rigorous academic institution, more or less in line with the other Ivy League schools. There's obviously, I mean, you wear a uniform, right? You're part of the Army. You do Army things all the time. Some are really worthwhile and some are rather silly, but anyway.
Sure.
And then, when you graduate, you owe 5 years of military service to our country. And it's you have to do it, right? That's how you basically repay, because the school is free.
Sure.
It is everyone who attends is on 100% full ride scholarship,
Okay.
and you actually get paid to attend. Not much, but enough for toothpaste and so on. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the deal, if you will, right? The Army pays for you to go to get a college degree, and then you owe the country 5 years of active service, and then another 3 years of inactive service.
Okay.
I have about 9.5 total years of active duty time, and then another couple years of reserve time
Okay.
in the Army.
So why West Point? Why the Army as opposed to any other
Well, because Navy
military
sucks.
academy?
Yes, and you can leave that in there. Navy sucks. Beat Navy. No one
about the Air
cares about
Force?
the Air Force.
Our undersheriff is an Air Force
Veteran.
Well,
Yes.
veteran. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So
And I should probably clarify. As a cop, I make fun of firefighters every day, right? And I will continue to do so until probably the day I die. That being said, if my house is on fire, or I have a medical emergency, the last thing you want as a cop, you want a firefighter.
Very true.
You're right. I make fun of the Navy, the Air Force, right? It is that inter-service rivalry. And I would tell you we have the best Navy and the best Air Force on the planet. And I am very thankful for what they do. And I hope that we beat them in every sport that we play them in.
Fair. That's a fair point.
Yes. So what was the question? Why the Army?
Yeah, why the Army? Why West Point as opposed
Yeah.
to Annapolis or any of the other military academies?
Maybe why the military first, probably.
Sure.
My family has no particular history of military service,
Okay.
right? I had one uncle in the Air Force and one uncle in the Navy, briefly, a couple year enlistments. But no, I don't have, because there were guys at West Point that were literally 4th or 5th generation West Pointers. I have none of that. I don't know, growing up, I was always drawn to the military kind of broadly.
Okay.
I'm a fairly avid reader, and I would read books about history and military history, and I just found it very, very interesting. And so I always kind of, from, I don't know, a very early age, probably elementary school, middle school at the latest, had developed an interest in going into the military. And it was very, very broad at first. I was going to be a fighter pilot, right? I was going to be an infantryman, a special forces guy, a SEAL. Just insert all the cool stuff that you see on TV or read about. And then, so I was actually, for years, had intended to go to the Naval Academy and try to become a SEAL. That was going to be what I wanted to do. And I have a brother. He's passed away, but I had a brother who's a commercial fisherman. And one summer, when I was in high school, during summer break, I'd been out of school for a few days or a week, and he called home, and his crew had just quit, or he'd fired him or something. And he's like, I can't find crew now. It's a little late in the season for him. He's like, I don't know where I'm going to find crewmen. I'm like, oh, I'll go do it. Well, the next day I found myself on a fishing boat doing commercial salmon fishing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the summer, I got off the boat and I said, I will never work on a boat again as long as I live. And actually, I hate boats.
So the Navy's out.
Yep,
Period.
Navy was
Okay.
out.
All right.
I never developed a strong interest in any of the Air Force stuff, specifically flying. It just, I don't know. I know people love it. It just didn't do much for me. And so it kind of focused to the Army. And
Because the Marine Corps, do they have a military
they
academy?
do not. They go to the Naval Academy or various other the other commissioning sources if you want to be an officer.
Okay.
But they are technically part of the Department of the Navy. The
No
Marines
kidding.
will tell you they are the men's department of the Department of the Navy. And so The Marines had interest, I guess,
Yeah.
but well, I can actually get back to that a little bit later. But um, well, I guess I'll say it now. When I was at West Point, every year, one from the graduating class, one person from each class could go to the Navy, the Marine Corps, or the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, I was actually interested in transferring to the Marine Corps after I
Mm-hmm.
graduated from West Point. And though my class rank was not incredibly stellar, I was high. I was the highest class ranked person who was interested. So had
Oh,
I pursued that, I presumably could have gone
sure.
to the Marine Corps. But for a variety of reasons, just decided no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy with the
Mm-hmm.
Army, and I stayed
Mm-hmm.
in the Army.
Right on.
Yeah,
Did you just apply like any other college? Did you have to be invited, or
yeah.
is
It
that
is. You apply like any other
okay?
college. Very rigorous entrance requirements,
Mm-hmm.
both academically. GPA has to be very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
SAT scores have to be very, very good. And then there's also a physical component. You have to
Mm-hmm.
pass physical fitness tests to
Yep.
get in. You have to play a sport.
Hmm.
In high school, and you have to play something while you're there. They have both intercollegiate, typical D1
Mm-hmm.
type intercollegiate
Mm-hmm.
sports. They have club sports, and then they have intramural sports. But everybody plays something while they're there.
Mm-hmm.
But to get in, the requirements, I would argue, are probably some of the hardest in the country.
Wow.
Not solely on the academic side, right? Clearly, there are very, very rigorous academic institutions,
Mm-hmm.
your Stanfords, your Harvards, all of
Yeah.
those other really high end academic schools, but they don't have the physical or military component to it.
Sure.
The other piece is that you have to have a congressional nomination to get in.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
So your congressman, whether it's someone from the House of Representatives, your senator,
Mm-hmm.
the vice president, or the president has to nominate you to attend.
Very cool.
And so I was actually nominated by Gary Condit Sr. In
No
his
kidding.
first year in Congress.
No kidding. Well,
Yes.
for our guests that don't know, Gary Condit Jr., the young man, is with us today. He's actually in charge of our media team,
Yes.
and very influential behind all of the videos that we release that that he
Yep.
would be recording. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
Very neat.
Yep. And so, it was in his first year in Congress, and he kind of did an application through him, and there was interviews,
Hmm.
and I got nominated.
Yeah,
And so,
that's really cool.
yeah,
So, are
off I
you
went.
the only member of your family that's gone to West Point?
Now, no.
Okay.
My son actually went to West Point as well, graduated 30 years behind me.
Sure.
And so 29 years and like 361 days or something
Yeah,
after me. And so he's a lieutenant in the Army now.
that's very exciting.
Yeah.
It must feel special having somebody, because I think it goes without saying, he really looks up to you.
Yeah, and it is. And it's not something. So I tell people all the time, if you want to go to a service academy, you cannot go because your parents want you to, or your
Mm,
grandparents, or your
yeah,
uncle, or right. If you're going to go there, you have to go because you want to go,
yeah.
because it's difficult. And so I never pushed it. We went for my 20th class reunion. He was in 8th grade, so my wife and I took our 3 kids back to the reunion, and there's a football game and
Hmm.
parades and all the stuff that they do there. And he was in 8th grade, and he said, "This is where I want to go."
That's
And
cool.
so, yeah, it took some work for him, but
Yeah.
he got in, and he's kind of now doing exactly what I did in the Army. Actually, when I went to West Point, I'd never seen a rugby game in my life and ended up on the rugby team.
All
He
right.
actually went for track and transitioned and ultimately played on the rugby team.
Very cool.
Yeah, so they did a little better. They won a national championship. I did not. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. That's really neat.
yeah,
What a legacy.
yeah. So
That's very special.
it's
Didn't know
fun.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
That's really cool. So he's a lieutenant in the Army. You were too.
Yes.
9.5 years active. Can you share just a little bit about some of the things, some of your accomplishments, things that you're proud of during your time?
Yep. So I was. So everybody who graduates is commissioned. Almost everybody. There's a few people that may
Hmm.
not meet some graduation medical requirements, but 99% of the people who graduate are commissioned into the Army or one of the other services as lieutenants.
Yep.
And there are it's changed. I think there's 16 different branches in the Army. There's infantry, armor, aviation, the various logistics branches, artillery, military intelligence, etc. And they're all specialties within the Army of what you do. I was an infantry lieutenant. The shortest version of the infantry, they're the guys that run around on the ground with guns and fight the other guys. That's the very layman's version of it.
Sure.
And so I was an infantry lieutenant. My first unit, I was in the 101st Airborne Division, which is not airborne any longer, but in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I was there for about 16 months, and then I went to the 75th Ranger Regiment after that, and I was stationed in Fort Lewis, Washington at the time. It is now Joint Base Lewis McChord. But the Ranger Regiment is a special operations unit. Call it the entry level one. At least back in the day. They're actually significantly more special now than 30 years ago when I did it.
Okay. So you said an entry level, but it's a special operations. I guess would the higher designation be the Delta Force? Is that?
Oh yes. Yeah,
okay.
That is like the very top tier.
A SEAL equivalent under the Army versus the Navy. Or
sort of
similar. Okay.
So it all gets very convoluted. The Ranger Regiment is technically an infantry unit at its core, but it has its own selection process, its own selection standards. They have their own release authority, meaning they can just kick somebody out of the regiment. They don't have to kick them out of the Army. So they have very high standards, and with that comes separate mission sets. And the Ranger Regiment specifically, they're the special operations. They are the special operations unit that is big. Most of them are very, very small. Right, a SEAL platoon is 14, 16 guys, very small. A Ranger Rifle platoon is over 40.
Oh, wow.
Right, and the entire Ranger Regiment is 2,000, 2,500 more now. It's morphed over the years. But the Ranger Regiment sort of existed to provide very high-end support to things like Delta, the SEAL teams, and so on that did the very, very special missions. So one of the things that we would do, if everyone is kind of familiar with what happened in Iran, where that pilot was shot down, I don't know any details beyond what anybody read in the media.
Sure.
But we would often do practice, things like airfield seizures, where we would, deploy to some notional foreign country, and we would seize an airfield in that country. And then other special operations units would come in, arrive somehow or another, and they would go do missions from there. So we kind of supported them, if you will. And, the kind of a legend in the special operations community, I won't say his name, some people may know who I'm referring to, but, his running kind of joke was like, when Delta gets in trouble, they call the Rangers. The SEALs get in trouble, they call the Rangers. If Rangers get in trouble, they just call more Rangers. And that was sort of the point of being the big unit, with all of the people that you can throw at a problem.
Yeah. Well, because these specialized forces have specialized training to do certain tasks, but it really takes an army to complete the goal. And so they really rely on maybe the first on scene, gathering the intelligence, making an area secure, things like that. Then the big guys come in.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I can completely see. And I'm only viewing that through my lens as a deputy sheriff for the last 25 years and seeing how operations require perimeters, outer perimeters, inner perimeters, and the SWAT team has to come in, but they need patrol staff to get there first. And so
it is much the same thing. Probably as a law enforcement analogy, if you had, our kind of standard patrol deputies would be the infantry, if you will. And if the SWAT team was one of the highly specialized units, the Ranger Regiment is sort of something in between there. They're very specialized, very highly selected, with high standards, but they're also not that top tier.
Sure. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, and so and many of those top tier units are ultimately fed from the Ranger Regiment.
Sure.
But then there's also Special Forces, the Green Berets. It's kind of its whole own separate entity that has a different mission set. The SEALs, obviously in the Navy, are kind of a blend of special forces and rangers and some of the other, tier 1 units. And then there's different levels of SEALs. There's kind of what they would refer to as the vanilla SEAls,
Mm-hmm.
the normal SEALs, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
obviously like the SEAL Team 6
Yeah.
type, right? There are different kind of layers in all of that too.
Yeah.
And then there's stuff out there that no one really knows about.
Yeah.
I don't really know how one even gets there.
Suffice to say, though, certainly your time not only at West Point in an academic setting, but also the practical application setting as a lieutenant in an infantry division, you've certainly learned some leadership qualities along the way.
Yes, and I guess on some of the military stuff, that was only about half my service. Then I actually got out after I left the Ranger Regiment, became a civilian, and farmed for several years. Went back in the military after 9/11, actually in the National
Oh.
Guard, and commanded an infantry company in Iraq in 2005. Got out of when we redeployed. Right, National Guard has civilian jobs. Well, I became a cop after that, and I actually got mobilized another time from 2010 to 2012, and went to Special Operations Command Europe, where I served there for 2 years.
No
So
kidding.
yeah, so I have a relatively unique military
Sure.
background, having served in both regular Army active duty, National Guard, and then through the reserve component as
Yeah.
well.
Is National Guard a component? Is it a branch of the Army, or is it a completely separate?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It is the Army National Guard, right? There's also the Air Guard, the Air National
Okay.
Guard,
Yeah.
and it is reserve component, but technically the National Guard under Title 32 is under state control. And there's obviously federal and state directives and collaborations and so on, as far as, your state will have this type of unit, your state will have that type of unit. But they are technically, most of the time, under state control, and then they can be federalized, which is what happened when I went to Iraq. My unit was federalized, meaning it reverted to national control, and it was deployed to Iraq.
Really?
Yep.
Well, you
And
mentioned
then,
it.
so
Go
the
ahead.
difference
Yeah.
too, then, say from what I'll call the true Army reserves, they are a reserve component, but they are fully part of the federal system.
Okay.
They do not have a state aspect to them.
Okay.
Most people won't care, don't care.
Yeah.
It's just when you're in that space, there's different roles and responsibilities and
Sure.
authorities and so on.
Well, like you said, even if they don't understand it, you're going to tease the fire department. I get it. But when you need a firefighter, you expect them to do it.
Yes.
The general public may not understand fully all of the different divisions and layers of the greater term, the military.
Right.
But boy, when we need them, all we ask is that you're trained and prepared for the mission at hand.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
So Sheriff, you kind of glazed over it, and I'm gonna bring you back to it because I feel like your humility is oozing out, like you didn't want to share some of the things that you did. But you had mentioned that during 9/11, or maybe because of 9/11, you maybe felt a calling to re-enlist or to go back. Are you able to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. I suppose by just about anybody who lived through 9/11, right, which is at least you and I.
Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody else in the room, sir. Really?
Do you remember it, though?
So that's for our guest. That's Timmy. I'm gonna jokingly call him Jamie, but our editor is in the back. He's maybe the oldest of the crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was working here. I remember I was getting off work and I was in the break room and the TVs were on
Okay.
when I
Yeah.
saw the first plane.
I'd said earlier that, after I was in the military the first time, I got out, and my family's all in agriculture, and I was a farmer for a few years. I got out in October of '99, and so I'd been farming for 2 years, specifically almonds, and on 9/11, woke up. It was almond harvest. We were getting ready to pick up almonds that day. Drinking coffee in the morning, watching the news, reading the newspaper back when they still had those. And, news breaks. I don't know what I was watching. Local news, I think. News break to, New York City and the first plane hitting. And, of course, everybody at first is kind of like, oh, what's going on? A random accident. And then actually watched the second plane hit the second tower live. And, at that point, I'm like, this is a terrorist attack, some sort of attack. Well, got my wife and all that. We watched it for a little bit. Called kind of my crew and said, we'll be along. chill out. We'll be out there when we're there. Actually ended up driving over to a friend's house, watched a little bit of it with him and his parents. He was out kind of where we farmed, and and I would tell you that I knew by the end of that day that I would go back into service at some point. And it, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's one of those things. Having been, in the Ranger Regiment, in a world where back then we carried pagers. Right, you waited for the pager to go off for this sort of thing, and then having left that, it's kind of like, oh, all my buddies who are in, their pagers just went off, or still in the military, and farming almonds is great, but at least for me, it was like, okay, well, I could do this for the next 30 or 40 years, and I don't know, the pull, that sense of purpose with the military. Just kind of latched on to me. And so it took a couple of years. I looked at various options of just going straight back on active duty, things like the FBI, some of that. And long story short, I ended up joining the California National Guard. And I joined a unit that I knew was deploying. So I actually joined about 3 weeks before we got our mobilization orders. And then the only shock was we all thought we were going to Afghanistan, and we got orders to Iraq. And so about 3 weeks after, joining the Guard, we got mobilized. The headquarters is here in Modesto, 1st Battalion of the 184 Infantry Regiment. And so I was there initially for, I don't know, a week or something as we mobilized. And then we flew to Fort Bliss, Texas, in El Paso. And we did about 6 months of training there. And then at the end of that, I became a company commander for the unit that's actually in Oakdale, Delta Company of the 184. And then we spent a month at JRTC in Fort Polk, Louisiana, which is the Joint Readiness Training Center. It's kind of we'll just call it a fake combat environment, if you will, right? They have role players and so on, and they train units for deployment. And so we spent a month there to kind of validate our training, and then we flew literally from Louisiana, ultimately to Kuwait. Flew through Ireland and then down into Kuwait. And then I actually drove from Kuwait into Baghdad in January of 2005.
So what was different? What was different in Iraq versus Afghanistan? You had mentioned you thought you would be going to Afghanistan. How did the two theaters differentiate?
I actually can't answer that. I don't know why one changed, why we changed from one deployment to the other. I don't know the answer to that.
Osama bin Laden was believed to be in Afghanistan.
Yes, and it was long before he was captured.
Yeah.
But I mean, we would have had no role in that per se. Just force allocation, right? Unit allocations.
Okay.
They must have decided they had enough in Afghanistan and needed some more in Iraq, or swapped some units around and it balanced the sheet. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we ended up in Iraq.
Yeah. When you made that decision, I mean, you were married, had children. How did that affect the family?
Yeah, it definitely affected him. I mean, you're right. I have still have, but at the time, a wife and 3 kids. I don't even remember exactly how old they were. I think my oldest daughter was in 3rd grade.
Okay, so young kids.
Yeah, 3rd, 2nd, and kindergarten or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Preschool maybe for my youngest. And so I mean, it definitely took some family discussion.
Sure.
But I'm very fortunate that my wife and I have known each other actually since 3rd grade. Dated a bit in high school and all throughout my time at West Point. We got married 2 weeks after I graduated from West Point. And so Sandy, when we got married, she kind of assumed we were going to have a military life. That was right for a career. And so that was kind of what she expected. And so obviously we got out. That was a mutual agreement. Our families were here. But going in, she kind of understood for me that sense of duty, that sense of pull, that sense of purpose. And so she was incredibly supportive. And, it was definitely a rough year for her as well. right? Obviously raising 3 little kids on her own, and we're blessed that we had a lot of family.
Yeah.
We lived out in the country on kind of one end of my family's ranch, if you will, and my sister and her husband and her family lived, I don't know, a quarter mile away, kind of another piece, and my parents lived, half a mile away on a different piece, kind of across the street, and her parents were in town, 10 minutes away. So we were very fortunate to have a lot of and some great friends. So as far as support, but yeah, I mean, it was a lot of work for her too.
Yeah. Well, I would never speak to how that made her feel, but I can just imagine. And I know Sandy. I think she's a wonderful woman. But man, to just say outwardly wanting to support her husband, but probably internally saying, "How in the hell am I going to do this?" I mean, I've got the 3 kids. Sure, it takes an army to raise kids, but with a husband that's not there, her own concerns about you being gone,
Yeah.
that can be a lot. So
Oh,
kudos
yeah.
to her.
For
And to
sure.
all military families, all military wives,
Yes.
it's not easy.
Well, and then I remember, like, we'd only been in Fort Bliss, Texas for less than a week. It was like the first week that we were there. My younger daughter fell off something and broke her arm. My one time I called, and I don't know, maybe my oldest daughter, one of the kids answered the phone. I'm like, "Oh, where's mom?" They're like, "Oh, she's outside with a gun trying to kill a squirrel that had been in the yard or
That's a good
something."
idea.
I'm like, "Oh boy, this is going to be a long."
Sure.
It was actually an 18-month deployment. It was 6 months of train up and then a year in Iraq. So I was gone for 18 months. Came home for right before we went to Iraq, and we got mid-tour leave in Iraq. And then, Sandy and the kids came to Fort Bliss a couple times and visited. So, it wasn't like we went 18 months without seeing each other, but it's 18 months gone.
Yeah. Boy, I am very fortunate just as a lay individual for all of the really truly the freedoms that the military provides for us, but now as being a father and a husband for many years, I really do appreciate the men and women both who stay behind to take care of the family. That's
Yes.
a big commitment, and
Oh, yes.
I can't imagine doing that without a supportive family.
Yes, I would completely agree.
Okay, so I heard you say a European operation, I think it was between 10 and 12.
Special Operations Command Europe.
Okay. But I feel like 10 or 12, you were here.
I was.
How did that happen? Walk us through that, please.
Yeah, so see, at the time, I was still technically in the National Guard.
Okay.
So short version, we came back from Iraq, and I knew I wouldn't farm full time. A lot of my soldiers in the Guard, right, they all have civilian jobs. A lot of them were in law enforcement, and they really encouraged me to look at it as a profession. They said it kind of would suit you. We think you would be good at it, et cetera. When I got back, coincidentally, most of our local law enforcement was also recruiting for, deputies or officers or whatever. And so I decided I'm going to go do a ride along with the sheriff's office, and called up, talked randomly to whoever the watch commander was, and they said, "Okay, come in on such and such a day." And I did, and I rode with Mitch Pinero.
Oh boy.
Yep, and
He's
great.
a legend in his own.
Yes, he
in his
is.
own regard. Yeah.
Yep. Mitch retired a few years ago, but I would have said that when Mitch retired, he was the best patrol deputy in this department.
He probably still is. If there were a title to
Yes.
hold, he would still hold that title.
I would agree. Just a phenomenal patrol deputy. And I went home, told my wife I found my new profession, and went to the police academy. I know. If you know
dragged her through the ringer, didn't you?
Yep. Went to the police academy and graduated in 2007, and
Okay.
I've been here ever since. But to your question, I was still in the National Guard, and through the various email networks and so on, SOCEUR, Special Operations Command Europe, they had various reserve assignments, mobilizations, because that's kind of what reserve component would do for certain units. They would, so they were deploying people to Iraq and Afghanistan, so then they would bring in reservists to kind of backfill them
Okay.
in their unit there in Europe. And so they had reached out, I guess it would have been in about 08 or no, in 09, I guess, and asked me to take mobilization and go to SOCEUR. Without all the backstory, I ended up turning it down. It was a real quick turnaround, like 6 weeks from the initial email to when I was supposed to be there, and very difficult to arrange everything, right? I had a house and we had to move the kids' schools and all that. And so anyway, after we turned it down, we kind of like, man, that would have been a great experience. And so about maybe 10 months later, they reached out again and said, we'd still like to have you come. Kind of my background was fairly unique for what they needed. And they, but it was I don't know, 3 months or something, 4 months until they wanted me to be there.
Yeah.
Well, that gave us some planning time, right, to make arrangements and so on. And the first time the kids were like, no, we don't want to go. And then the second time they were like, well, 2 of the 3 were like, yeah, that would have been kind of cool.
Yeah.
So
this was not just you being deployed.
Yeah.
You're uprooting the entire family.
Yep. And so, long story short, we took the deployment. It was 1 year initially, and we got there, and not long after I'd been there, they wanted me to stay for a second year, which we did. It was also the time when our department was going through a lot of the rifts. And so I actually ended up getting riffed while I was gone for 2 or 3 months. And
a riff is, for anybody that doesn't know, that's a reduction in force.
Yep.
During that time.
Yep.
Budgets crashed,
Yep.
and we were
and
forced
so
to lay
I
off.
actually lost my job here. It didn't matter to me. And I kind of knew it was coming, which was also a factor in like, well, I can go do this and, pay the bills while in the meantime. And I think I was like the second to the last person riffed.
Boy.
Yeah, I barely got cut. Anyway, it all happened while I was there, and I was actually supposed to stay for a 3rd year as well, and at which point I would have gone to Afghanistan for SOC year and done a 100-day deployment there, but the Army couldn't get my orders done in time. Really? And Army bureaucracy. Yeah. And I finally kind of told them, I'm like, look, if I don't have my orders by a certain date, I need to decline them because, right, I have to let work know that I'm coming back to work. I had people living in my house while we were gone. I have to tell them, hey, I'm coming home. You got to move out.
Yeah.
And so the orders didn't come through. And so I said, well, I got to go. And so we did. So we did 2 years there. Very different. I mean, I lived in Stuttgart, Germany. Well, a fantastic city. Tons of stuff to do. My kids have seen Western Europe. Learned to ski in the Alps. I mean, it was not a difficult deployment.
Yeah, that's cool.
Had to ride my bike so I could drink the German beer. It
aid in the metabolization process. Yeah,
but no, it was a tremendous experience for the family.
Okay, so you were a deputy here for a few years, with a brief pause, 2 years in Germany. Can we transition into so we've gone over, and I think we've barely scratched the surface of your dedication, your commitment to country, your service to country, but now how does that lead you into service to community?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story in that I talked a little bit about how my soldiers had kind of encouraged me to look at law enforcement because when I joined the Guard, right at I had been farming, joined the Guard, knew I was leaving, but I always kind of knew I would not farm full time when I returned. Yeah. My whole family does ag. It's wonderful. My wife actually still farms with my daughter a little bit. They grow roses commercially, and I'm kind of now a farm laborer for them on the weekends.
Very good.
But
payback.
Exactly. But I just knew it wasn't going to be what I did, and so I explained how I ended up in law enforcement. But local law enforcement was never something on my radar ever. I just never really considered it. We have lots of folks that work here that, early on at 12, 16, 18, thought, man, I want to become a cop. And that's incredible. That was just not my story. For me, I mean, I graduated from the police academy at 35, right? We had one guy who was still 20.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And so, I was the old man in the class. There was one actually older than me. But kind of to your question, the West Point motto is duty, honor, country, right? Okay. Those are those 3 hallowed words: reverently dictate what you can do, what you shall do, and what you ought to do, or something like that. It's been a while. But that is really ingrained in you when you're there. And some of those words, we don't actually talk about duty a lot anymore. We really don't ever talk about honor. right? Country, we still talk about that, especially now with the 250th and so on. But I would say it's really easy. Service to country is not just the United States. I kind of view it as, well, I can just drop the R and country turns into county.
Yeah.
And, it's very easy for me to mentally make that transition, but the idea is service. And, I will say I loved the military. I loved the job. Leading soldiers is, in my opinion, one of the most rewarding things I have ever done. Is, even in Iraq, which had a lot of drama, I have the kind of dubious distinction of being the California National Guard company commander with the most casualties in the history of the California National Guard. So it was a relatively dramatic year. But it was also one of the most rewarding experiences I have ever had. And when I went to SOC year, I could have stayed in the military and finished on active duty and finished a military career. They asked me if I would be interested in doing that. The problem with the military, over the course of a career, is that you move a lot.
Yeah.
In my first 5 years of active duty, I moved 5 times. I moved from West Point to Georgia, Georgia to Tennessee, Tennessee to Washington, back to Georgia, and then home finally. And had I not moved home, if I would have stayed in the Army, I would have moved to some other Army post.
Yeah.
And so, 5 years, 5 moves, and I stayed in Washington for over 2 years at the Ranger Regiment. So, right, literally when we moved home, there were boxes that we had packed up either in West Point or at Fort Benning, Georgia. And we had never opened those boxes in 5 moves. We're
They
like,
stay packed.
Right, what's in here? Clearly, it was not something important.
Yeah.
Probably didn't need to haul it around the country. But, from that family standpoint, my family is really the most important thing in the world to me. And moving them around, a lot of my classmates at West Point or other officers or soldiers that I dealt with in the military had grown up in the military.
Yeah.
And a lot of their family dynamics were strained from all of the movements and so on.
Yeah.
So to me, I did not really want that for my family, at least not to the extreme.
Yeah.
And so getting into local law enforcement was that ability to serve, but also provide family stability. And so
you'd still be home every night.
Yep.
One way or another.
Exactly. Or every morning when you have to graveyard. But right, you're home. You're not on deployments. Right, even if you're working overtime or something, you can still hopefully make your kid's soccer game or their dance recital or whatever. And so that was just very important to me. So it was that balance of service but also family stability.
Yeah. That's really interesting because in law enforcement, I've served my entire adult life in law enforcement. I've worked from the age of 18 back in the early days. You could be at 18, starting in the jails, Merced County, and hell, even before that, started at Merced Junior College in their little police department that once was as a security guy. But you talk about being home every night, and in this locale, we touch some Bay Area agencies that make a whole lot of money.
Oh, yes.
But you mentioned it. I can be home every night. Yes, I'm going to make less money by staying here, but I can be home every night with my family. I even know that if my kid had a baseball game and I'm at work, I have your full support and approval to say, pop in. Actually, not even your support, but I think your demand to say, check in on your family and be there, be present. Maybe not the entire game.
Oh, yep.
But those are some of the luxuries that this office provides that if I were working over in the Bay Area, over the hill, I'd have more money in my bank account.
Yes.
But I would have a lot less time with my kids. And so that's super important. And I agree with you. Money can buy a lot of things, but it cannot buy time.
Correct.
It can't buy time with the family.
And I remember when I was a patrol sergeant, on B days, my kids were playing youth soccer in Turlock. And, their games would be at whatever time of the day, and I would be working. But, assuming there was nothing significant that required my attention, I would go stop there. They actually had law enforcement parking, right? So I could pull my patrol car in, back it in. And I remember on at least 2 occasions, like literally running off the field and driving out of the parking lot code very slowly because it's a parking lot, and taking off because something happened. But it's just, and my kids got it, right? But at least Dad was there for a minute. So I do. And I think, quite frankly, I think the community appreciates that.
I think so too. I think so too. And it's, some people could maybe present the argument, well, what are you doing here? You're not doing anything to protect and serve. But the other side of that coin is that people would say, hey, it's really nice to see you.
Yes.
They feel like they're being served. They feel as though they're being protected. And we have to appease the naysayers as well. But
yeah, which I think is somewhat ridiculous because they would be happy for me to pay Nate to attend some event where his kids probably aren't.
Yeah.
Right? I could send you to that in the under the guise of community-oriented policing. Why would I not allow you to go to your own kids' event? Yeah. Acknowledging that if you can't make it, you can't make it, right? Because there's things going on that require your duties. Yep. But hey, if it's a slow morning or a slow evening or whatnot, by all means, go shake some hands. Right? Because here's the other thing that happens every time you do that. Somebody will come up to you with some question. Oh, hey, I had this thing. What happened down the street from my house 3 Saturdays ago at 11, at night? Yeah.
Well, but you're an elected official. You're the sheriff. You're voted in by your community, the constituents. It's really a great organic way to just say, let my deputies get involved in the community because you're right. They're asked questions. They're pulled aside and saying, hey, can you tell me about this? It's happened to me more times than I can even recount. Yeah.
I sort of related, sort of not. I went to a friend's 60th birthday party on Saturday night. Known him and his family for decades. It was actually on 9/11. It was actually his parents' house that I stopped at. Yep. And so, I mean, that's now 25 years ago, and knew him long before that. But the point to this is literally walking into his birthday party. The first 3 people that I talked to, people that I've known for a long time, 3 sheriffy questions. One was CCW's. I think one was like how somebody wanted a job or how to apply. Like, my nephew wants to apply type of thing. And I don't even remember what the third one was.
Are you ever not sheriff?
No.
Yeah, no. I can bet that can be draining.
Yes, that is for sure. There are times when you're like, I just want to be in shorts and flip-flops and go down to the corner store and, grab some beer before the 49ers game, right? And, I'm going to go buy some beer to come home and watch the game. And, like, aren't you the – yes, I am,
Well, this podcast might get even more exposure. I don't know. I mean, I hope all of our guests will actually subscribe, tune in on a monthly basis, and come back for more. And you're going to be a guest more often. Sheriff, we've talked a little, and again, I think we've already scratched the surface of your military service. Now you went on a ride along, you contacted the watch commander, you kind of got a second bug to be a cop. Silly decision, but share with us a little bit about the road to being the 22nd sheriff of this county since 1854. You're the 22nd. How did you get there?
It was kind of interesting because when I went to the police academy, right, it was 7 months or something after we got back from Iraq, and week 1 in the academy, you had to write a memo about why you wanted to be the class leader. Well, I had just come from being a company commander in combat for a year, and I wrote a memo about why I did not want to be the class leader. I just wanted to be in charge of nobody but myself. Yeah. And I thought, I tried to phrase it very nicely, like, I've done this, somebody else should be given the opportunity. And the next Monday, guess who was the class leader? It was me. And
well, you know why.
Because I made it easy for the RTOs.
Yes, absolutely. That makes their job much easier.
I think as the class leader, I think I actually issued more punishment than the RTOs did after the first month or two.
Yeah.
Anyway, cleared FTO and became a solo beat deputy, as we call it, and it was glorious. I was in charge of no one but myself, deal with the problems that the community was facing, and I just loved being on patrol. I was on patrol for a little less than 2 years, and there was an opening on our what we called Sting at the time, our kind of gang drug squad,
Mm-hmm.
and I applied for that. And I was selected for Sting, and I didn't stay there that long. Because they rotated some of the agricultural crimes detectives. I had to go back to patrol or what. However, I don't even know what transpired, but the detective lieutenant came and he's like, "Hey, you're doing great here in Sting, but would you, given your family history and ag background and all that, would you have any interest in becoming an ag crimes detective?" And they deal with agricultural related crimes, mostly thefts, but not exclusively. People do weird, deviant things with animals
Yep.
that you have to deal with every once in a while.
Yep.
And so he's like, think about it for a while. And I did. And I talked to the family, and I said, yeah, I'll do that. Great assignment. Loved it. I probably half of the victims that I had, farmers who'd had various crimes committed on their ranches, I knew them personally, already had their cell number, on my personal phone, right? I mean, that's how well I knew them.
Yeah.
And so a very rewarding time. And then left that, went to Sakier, came back, went back to patrol. Again, just loved being not in charge of anybody. It was just me. But then the opportunity came up to promote to sergeant. And at that time, I don't know, I think I was 40, 41. I'd been here, I guess, technically 6 years, 4 years, counting my time in Germany or discounting my time in Germany. I kind of looked at it, I thought, I think I have something to add to the organization if I promote to sergeant. So I did, tested, and I was selected and promoted to sergeant. I was a patrol sergeant for, I think, about 18 months, something like that. And then I went to internal affairs. And very needed, essential part of the organization. And I was glad I only did that for about 3.5 months.
Yeah.
Learned a lot. The internal affairs is essentially the cops that investigate the cops. It's the simplest way to put it.
Yeah.
But then
Police.
Yes, exactly.
Police.
But then I tested for lieutenant, and I was selected and promoted, and I became the Patterson police chief. So I served out there for about 3.5 years as the chief. And then Adam Christensen, my predecessor, I guess I should probably back up a little bit. And when I was in Germany at Sakier, good friends, the one whose 60th birthday I just went to. I am not 60. He is much, much older than I am. May or may not have come up at his birthday party. But he and his wife and his kids, they came and visited us, and he had been on a local city council, and he did 4 years there, and I'd kind of helped him get into that role. When we were actually in Switzerland, we had rented a little Swiss chalet. And we probably were drinking too much wine, but he tells me that, he's like, I'm not going to run for re-election. And I was kind of mad at him. I'm like, what? You worked so hard to get here. You're doing great. Why not? And he's like, it's just time to move on. And I don't remember. I think it was his wife said, well, what are you going to do? This is why I say may have had too much wine.
Yeah.
But I kind of flippantly said, maybe I'll run for sheriff someday. And so anyway, I came back and kind of progressed. And Adam Christensen, my predecessor, he and I had a conversation at some point, and he said, he was going to run one more time, and he said, maybe after that, I don't think I'll do it again. Any interest? And he asked some other people as well, and apparently none of them had any interest. The folks that he thought would be good at the job, or do decent at least. So I distinctly remember one night he had come to Patterson for something, and he came into my office, which is pretty unusual, right? Normally, right, that the sheriff doesn't come to you, you go to him.
Yeah. You're usually called to the principal's office.
Yes.
The principal doesn't come to your classroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he comes walking in, I'm like, oh boy, what did I do?
You know that we all have the same opinion when you come to our office. You know that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
But I like to make everybody nervous sometimes.
Fair enough. As long as you're aware of that.
Yeah. But anyway, he comes in, he shuts the door. I'm like, now what did I really do? Anyway, he tells me, he's like, I'm not going to run again. I'm done at the end of this term. You going to do it? Or, you want to run? And so I talked to my wife, and we said, yeah, we'll give it a go. And I ran, and I won, and I've now been sheriff for 7.5 years.
Yeah. from Sheriff Christensen's perspective, is it important to have a predecessor or a successor to say, I want to develop this person, I want to invest time to say I know that I'm leaving this office in good
Yep.
hands?
Yep. There are pros and cons to that. That is very
Yeah.
common.
Yeah.
And I thought Adam was a great sheriff. Adam and I were not particularly close, though.
Mm-hmm.
There were certainly people that I would say were closer to him personally, but I thought highly of him professionally, and we'd had many interactions. And so, I mean, I would say he certainly worked with me on what a campaign took and the roles of the job and so on. And that is fairly common amongst the sheriffs. A lot of folks kind of want to choose their successor, or at least really get their person in place, guy or gal. It's kind of irrelevant. And I don't know that I definitively share that sentiment. We could have an entire another podcast on this topic, but kind of on politics and so on. But the people pick.
Yeah.
And I think this idea of getting a candidate pushed on you, I mean, I can certainly understand, right? When the time comes and I decide I'm not going to run again, and somebody else steps up, I will probably end up backing someone, most likely. Maybe not. Maybe there's 2 or 3 excellent candidates, and I'm like, the people need to choose. But I feel strongly that it is the people that make the decision. And I don't like the idea of kind of saying, here's your guy.
Yeah.
Or gal. But
that's very interesting, because it seems as though that's very counterculture today.
I agree.
Where we're kind of told what we should accept and what we should like and what we should, you name it.
Yep. Which is why.
So that's actually refreshing to hear.
Which is why I'd say we could go on about this topic at length.
Maybe we will.
Yes.
On a follow-up episode.
Yeah.
Take good note of that, Timmy. We're gonna. Okay, so but he came to you and said, "Are you interested?"
Yep.
Maybe shared with you some information as to how to be better prepared.
Oh,
but
yeah.
didn't really go out of his way to.
I mean, he endorsed me. He supported me. He certainly
okay.
gave me people to, hey, here's a list of folks that you should contact for support.
Yeah.
Whether it's financial, right? Everybody knows campaigns cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Or it's political support or community support or whatever. And so he was very helpful. I don't mean that in any way. Absolutely. And like I said, he talked a lot about this is what the job entails. There was one thing he kind of never mentioned. I'd been elected. He was still sheriff. I was sheriff-elect, and we were in what's now my office, his office still at the time. And he said something about being the public administrator. I'm like, what the hell is the public administrator? It's like, well, you're the public administrator. Like or you will be, right? When you're sworn in. I'm like, what is it? What do you could have maybe brought this up beforehand,
Is it, can we take just a minute and explain? Because we are deputy sheriffs, but we are also deputy sheriff, we are deputy sheriff coroners.
Yes.
And so how does that play into the public administrative part?
So when someone dies and they do not have a will and it goes to probate, assuming there's some legal pieces to it, right? But if there's no one there, that we take over the estate until it's adjudicated through the courts, right? We become the fiduciary of the estate, right? Control all the assets until the court decides who the next of kin are or whatnot, and they're dispersed. And
so that doesn't necessarily mean that we profit from somebody else's.
No,
we just kind of hold it, maintain it, protect it.
Yeah, it's a
from
non-profit type of thing.
Yeah.
There are expenses that we do incur and collect, but no, it is not a for-profit type of thing. It's just, but it is kind of a high liability. You definitely need some sharp people that actually are doing the work, and so we've been blessed with that too. Thank goodness.
Yeah. But for all of our guests, go get a revocable living trust. Make sure that your home, your assets are protected out of probate. It's just another fiasco for your surviving next of kin to deal with. And probably it could take some of the burden off of your plate, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So you have been sheriff for 7.5 years.
Yep.
You are the 22nd sheriff.
Yep.
May I ask, what does the next few years hold? We're gonna have you as sheriff again. assuming that the public,
Yeah,
casts a vote for
yeah,
you. What are your goals
yeah.
moving
No,
forward?
that is the plan. This is a strange one-off 6-year term.
Yeah.
So technically, myself, the district attorney, and so on should have been up for re-election this year.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see, my last election was in 22. After that election, state legislature passed a bill and the governor signed it into law that moved just the sheriffs and the DAs from the gubernatorial cycle to the presidential cycle.
Okay.
And with that, this term and this term alone became a 6-year term.
As opposed to your traditional
4 years.
like everything.
Yep.
Okay.
And so now my next election will be in 28, and I fully intend to run again in 28. I have, I think, one more term in me.
Okay.
And so, yeah, there's still.
Because you're not anywhere near 60, so you've certainly got some working life left.
Yes,
Okay, good.
much younger than my 60-year-old
Okay.
friend.
All right.
But no, I do, and there's still a lot to do. I think we've done a lot. We've definitely moved the needle, but there's still just a lot to do, and I think we're on a pretty good glide path right now. I will tell you, and say I've been with the organization now for 19 years, and I believe that we are in the strongest position we have ever been in 19 years.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that are here that have been around longer, I think many of them would agree with, potentially even longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
Just staffing-wise, budget-wise, training-wise, equipment-wise, facilities-wise. I mean, just we are, I believe, in a really strong position, but there's a lot to change. I think law enforcement is on the cusp of changing how some things happen. We're always going to respond to calls for service, but I believe that intelligence-driven policing, and I use that term very broadly because there are some of this stuff comes with kind of definitions, but using information to change outcomes is the wave of the future.
Mm-hmm.
But to accomplish that, we have to change a lot of our systems. And again, I mean that broadly. It's organizational structures. It's actual like hardware or software systems. It's integrating them all into kind of one, changing systemic processes as to how we evaluate things. And kind of by way of example, you can insert one of many incident that you see on national TV, right? From locally to, New Jersey or Florida, it doesn't really matter, where there's some critical incident that has a negative outcome, an officer involved shooting, a use of force that kind of really goes sideways. And after, they can turn into these big kind of public spectacles. And after the fact, that guy just needed help, right? The problem that we have with I'll just call it the system, most of the data that can provide a different outcome is really only available after the fact. And what do I mean by that, right? You know as well as anybody, right? You get the call for service where there's some crazy brother or something in a house with a knife or some other weapon or, some harmful object, right? The family, the friends, the roommates, whatever they call, they want law enforcement to respond. Law enforcement shows up. They confront the person. He charges at them with a knife, and 60 seconds after they come on scene, and he's shot because he's a threat to the family, the law enforcement officers, whatever the case may be. And then you hear we just wanted to get him help.
Yep.
Valid and true
Yep.
and good, but a social worker is not going to respond to that because this person is armed and a dangerous threat, which is what caused the family to call. Law enforcement shows up, and 60 seconds after they've been there, this incident occurs. They have never seen this guy before, right? They don't know all of his backstory. They don't know that, an hour before he posted on social media, an empty bottle of vodka that he had just drained, or they don't know so many sets of data until the investigation after the fact.
Yep.
And so what I mean by changing outcomes through information is getting that information that is out there into the hands of, responding deputies or officers, law enforcement, en route to the incident, when they're on scene in real time to hopefully drive different tactics that can lead to a different outcome.
Yeah.
And that is where we're trying to change. Now, here's where some of the challenge comes. We have so many data streams that we have access to, whether they're law enforcement specific, open source, social media, whatever. It's trying to synthesize all of that data rapidly and get it into a kind of an actionable format so you can make a decision. That again, hopefully prevents negative outcomes or comes up or creates more positive outcomes. But we have to, but that is changing a lot. I believe artificial intelligence is going to dramatically change that ability, our ability to process and synthesize that information functionally instantaneously, right? But then we've got to be able to broadcast, transmit, right? Get that information in front of the deputies who are trying to deal with somebody in a manner that they can both receive the information and safely deal with the individual, right? There are a lot of moving parts to this, and it's not a simple solution, but we have to work to that end.
And so certainly what you've just described is probably an entire episode, an entire podcast all by itself, because you mentioned AI, you mentioned these data streams that are coming in, and how do we get that information that maybe we can acquire, but how do we get it real time to the deputies that are on scene or en route to make those decisions? That's a much broader conversation,
Oh,
I
yes.
think.
Yep. Its own whole topic.
Yeah, because I agree with you. I'm one of the crisis negotiations team leaders. So we talk a lot about when you talk about the brother who's armed with a knife and is either homicidal or suicidal, how do we buy time to de-escalate? And we can provide those resources, because maybe a cop is not what he needs, but a cop is all that we have available to give to you. How do we bridge that gap and say you need mental health more than you need
They don't need to go to jail.
Correct. In
That's not the
most
solution.
instances,
Yes.
The
root cause is not, I'm sorry, the real solution is not jail. There may be a detour there.
Yes, a pit stop.
Yep. But that's not going to solve the problem.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the families need help, and all they know to do is to call 911.
Yes.
And when they say man armed with a knife, well, they're not going to get an ambulance. They're not going to get a fire truck. They're not going to get a social worker.
Correct.
And so and we've luckily not seen a lot of those issues here locally, but certainly nationally there's,
And we do have some.
We
I
do.
mean, we certainly do. That we've had one not that long ago. Similar vein, slightly different situation. And they're tragic, but at the same token, some of it I do believe there is a level that is not preventable, right? A small percentage. I do think more of it is preventable. A lot more of it is preventable, though, with getting the right information in the hand. So I always say, information and time drive tactics.
Yes.
Right. The more information you have and the more time you have, you can come up with different tactics to resolve a situation. If it's very fast moving, a threat that cannot be contained rapidly. But if you can contain it, you can get the right information and you have the time to deal with it. I think we can come up with different outcomes, sort of related, sort of not. People always say, oh, we need to look at their policies. It is almost never a function of policy.
Sure.
Almost never.
Sure. And to that point, and I know that we've kind of gone off on a tangent, but that's okay. These are just raw, organic conversations, and we're going to go with wherever they lead us. But to that point, we have changed policy, I believe, for the better.
Yes.
On the heels of Sheriff Jim Cooper out of Sacramento County.
Yep.
Where for those that are not aware, for our public to know, in many instances, when we have people that are suffering a mental health breakdown, I'll call it, and again, the cause of the mental health breakdown is irrelevant, but when they're not committing a crime in that moment, you will likely not see a deputy sheriff respond anymore. And instead, through collaboration and cooperation with behavioral health, we now have a process, a process to send mental health crisis workers that are non-uniformed. They are not armed, and they are solely focused on de-escalation, allowing this person who's in crisis opportunity to just vent, and I guess we'll just call it a softer approach,
Uh-huh.
where we've seen a lot of success, but I think that there's still a lot of more work to do
Yes.
in that process.
Yes. And I think that there are also ways to kind of proactively prevent some of that
Okay.
through more, I'll call it call it social work detectives, if you will, right? That can get in front of certain things.
Yeah.
Again, kind of a whole separate
Yeah.
conversation.
I feel like we're gonna probably come back to this on a follow-up episode.
Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
should.
Okay. So, but you're gonna be running for sheriff again. We're gonna worry about that here in the next couple of years. Um, you've still got some unfinished business to see through. I like it. I hope and I think that our community will like that as well. But kind of in closing, we're running a little long here, and I want to be respectful of your time. Uh, tell us just one in closing. Tell us about what your service to country and community. How does that really roll into the 250th birthday of this great nation, the independence that we have, the freedoms that we enjoy, some of the things that you learned at West Point, some of the real life experiences you learned in Iraq, and now as being sheriff. What's a message to what does this mean to you?
Yeah. It's because I've actually thought about this a little bit, right? As you come up to the 250th, right? We've talked about my story a little bit. West Point is the longest serving U.S. military installation in our country, like continually serving, or open, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's on the west point of the Hudson, and there was a great chain that ran across the Hudson to prevent the British from going up and down the river. Benedict Arnold, one of the reasons he was hung was because when he became a traitor, he was actually trying to sell the plans of West Point to the British.
No kidding.
Yep. It was West Point itself as the military academy was founded in 1802. Right, so quick math, 26 years after the founding of our nation. And so, if you kind of start there, right, we'll say I grew up both in my family here. Right, my parents were very patriotic and so on. My grandfather had immigrated from Holland and became very American, and he was an American and proud of that. And so I grew up in that both as a kid, but then when you think about it, growing up as an adult, that is you are in an old institution, especially for America, at an old facility that really honors the traditions of the country and the purpose of the founding of our country. And that is significant. And I think that, there is a lot of negative national commentary right now, right or left. I don't care. Pick one side. You can, right? It's not relevant to me which side you're on. I would argue that both sides can be extremely negative. And I think that the challenge comes that we have to remember the progress that we have made as a nation. And if you go back to where we start, we had slaves when our country was founded. We got rid of them, fought a large war with ourselves, of which that was one of the major causes of the Civil War, right? Even then, right, once the slaves were freed, life wasn't perfect. We went through the whole civil rights movement, right? We have changed a lot of what we've done. And I think in hindsight, most of it's for the better. I think that I certainly know that some of my opinions on social matters have morphed as an adult. And I think that I have really learned that you have to separate the personal from the professional. I often will say, the sheriff makes decisions that Jeff doesn't like.
Sure.
Right? Because as the
You have to.
sheriff, I have to do certain things that I would personally rather not do. But I think as we look at our country, hands down, the United States of America is the greatest country that has ever existed. Immigration, major point of discussion right now, for a lot of valid reasons. Why is it, though?
That's my term. That's my line.
Why is it?
Oh, yes, sir.
But why
Okay.
is it
All
that
right.
everybody
Here we
wants
go.
to come to America?
Sure.
Right? Why are people not going to insert North Korea, Iran, right? These places. Why are they not doing that? They want to come here. Why? Because America is great.
Yeah.
And there is opportunity. There is more freedom in America, than really any other country in the world.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that. And we have to maintain that and uphold that. I think at some level, I do think we have kind of forgotten the ability of the American dream. The fact that I think if you want to talk about political parties, both parties try to tell too many people what to think, how to act. America was founded on freedom and independence.
Yeah.
And to me, that is one of the greatest things really in existence.
Yeah. And so doing your job as sheriff, quite important that you and your deputies uphold
Yes.
those constitutional rights to uphold the freedom and independence that we do, even if it means you've got the freedom to drink beer and then drive a car. Even if it's against the law, we need to try to prevent it. But we have to accept that the Second Amendment protects my right to own a firearm and somebody who might have ill intentions. And so maybe Jeff wouldn't like it, but he has to uphold it. There's a lot to it.
I mean, there's a lot of laws that we don't like. I think we can say as a profession, I will tell you, you can get rid of probably a third of the laws on the books, and I can do my job just as well.
Sure.
Maybe half.
Sure. That's going to be another whole episode.
Oh,
so,
yes.
Yeah, stand by for that one.
Yeah. But, and it can be touchy, right? I mean, we are in a profession that denies people of their rights legally, right? I mean, that is, at the end of the day, that is kind of what we do.
Yeah.
But you are 100% correct, Nate. We have to really balance that. And there have been a number of times where, we just kind of look at it and say, that law is probably no good.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot more to discuss. And I believe, sir, that for our first episode, we've covered a lot of great topics. It's not often that I get the opportunity to tell the boss what he's going to be doing, but I can say that it's my hope, my desire that you will be a common guest on this podcast, because I really, truly believe that your community supports you, supports us, but you as the figurehead. But I also believe they really enjoy getting your insight, your perspective. And so I think I'm just going to tell you no less than quarterly, we're going to have you on the bit, and I'll get on your calendar and I'll make sure that you're here. But really, truly, sir, I want to thank you for your service to country, your service to community. I think you're a fine man. Thank you to Sandy and your family for all the sacrifice they made. And I really have enjoyed our talk.
Thanks, Nate.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
We'll hope to see you again soon.
Of course.